Hi, everyone. Elliot Began with TIG. I'm here with Peggy from Creative Alignments. We'll give everyone a few minutes to start making their way in. And while we're waiting, I'll give Peggy a chance just in a second to introduce herself a bit more and talk a little bit more about Creative Alignments. But just a reminder of what this is all about is it's you and your questions. So we want you to have the ability to ask any questions around the topics that we're going to hit upon today, and ask them in a way that gets you the answers that you need to go do the things that you need to do with the business. Staffing and all of this at this moment in time is just it's weirdness. We're in a weird moment, and yet there's, as I've been saying all along, there's opportunity amidst the chaos, and that could mean it's the opportunity right now for that great hire. So I wanted to get Peggy on just to, one, give us an overview of what's happening in the space from a staffing perspective. Two, what you could be doing to kind of either evaluate your team and your team in the needs that you have for your team, both now and in the future. And then anything else tactically that she can offer just about helping an organization get through this uncertainty and so forth. So without going any further, no one's really here to listen to me anyways. I will let Peggy kind of share a little bit about her background and a little bit more about Creative Alignment, and then we'll start answering your questions. So Peggy, thanks for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Yeah, so I founded Creative Alignments about 10 years ago, and we do recruiting. I'm sorry, you didn't get the memo. You didn't get the memo. The joys of working at home.
The joys of working at home.
Two entrepreneurs in a home with two kids, both homeschooling. So anyway, I started Creative Alignments really as an alternative to the traditional model, and the traditional model being contingency-based recruiting, which hadn't served me in the past when I was internal. And so we offer recruiting by the hour. So time-based recruiting is what we call it. And about, I'd say 6 years ago or so, we started to get a number of referrals in the natural product space, being based in Boulder ourselves. And that's grown to be half of our business. At this point, we're 33 employees. And so we do half of our business in technology, software, and half in food and consumer products.
And how did you first get into the space?
So I fell into it, as most recruiters do. I had been a high school math teacher, and I didn't want to teach anymore. I left teaching to be in Boulder with my then boyfriend, now husband, who is like entrepreneur from the womb. So he was in the process of buying a design agency. He had an option, I should say, to buy it, and completed that option. And I joined them, just helping. And most of what I helped with was recruiting at the very beginning. And then I ended up joining as a full-time staff member for about 4 years and did everything from HR to recruiting to account management. And then in 2003, when there was the dot-com bust, a lot of the work that we were doing out of Boulder was web oriented. And so that business went away. And so we consolidated everything back to San Francisco, where the original design team had been. And I didn't want to move there. So I just did the recruiting remotely for a number of years. And in 2010, my husband had started his now business, and he said, I think we need a hedge on this. And I said, great, I'd like to start a yoga studio. And he's like, let me show you the math, a yoga studio P&L and a recruiting firm. And I thought, oh man, I'm like, recruiting firm, this is just what I do on the side, and he's like, well, just, hire a few more people as you need and get some more clients, and you don't need to, it doesn't need to be a big deal kind of thing. So I went out actually with a focus on design agencies, hence the name Creative Alignments. And then it's just grown from there.
That's awesome. So tell me how time-based recruiting is different. I mean, the obvious is just the way the fee structure works, but why is that beneficial to especially to most of the people who will be either on this today or watching the video or listening to the podcast? Why is it a benefit to them?
Yeah, thanks for that. So I'm not going to say that all contingency-based recruiting is bad by any means, but I do believe if you're aligned with a windfall, you're not aligned with the client. So I think the nature of contingency-based recruiting is that you want to win, if you will. And it's kind of, it means that your alignment is towards the candidate, towards getting the hire, towards the what the candidate's being made or being paid. And in our case, we just want our clients to hire who they want to hire, right? We want to make sure they have the right people. So the alignment we feel like is there more. It's more like an in-house recruiter, just outsourced. So, and then in the end, because we don't do a whole bunch of work that we don't get paid for, like a contingency recruiter is, so therefore they have to charge a lot when they are successful. In our case, we charge along the way, and it allows our fees in the end to be a lot less expensive. So we average somewhere between 8 to 12% of the first year salary, as opposed
That's
to
a pretty substantial difference. Yeah.
20 to 30.
All right, so let me switch the questioning to I don't know if you've noticed, but we're kind of living in a weird time. I mean,
You think? Yeah.
as you and I have known each other right now, actually, well, no, it would have been next week that I would have been in Boulder, but we're
Yeah.
talking to each other from our living rooms instead of our offices,
Yeah.
which is super cool because you don't always get the opportunity to get introduced to a pocket mouse before a webinar, which is awesome. But what are you seeing out there? I mean, let's talk first about brands in their staffing as a whole. Are most brands trying to keep their teams intact? What are you hearing from
Yeah.
from your clients?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could give you a consistent across the board answer, but I'll give you the general experience we've had. So first was, wow, our tech clients are putting things on hold because they're uncertain and nervous, or if there were tech service companies, they were losing business themselves. And I thought, food is going to do well right now. Then we had a number of our food companies put things on hold because they were also just nervous. I think people just generally right now thought, I don't know that I should be hiring during this period of time, right? That has slowly shifted, and now there are some that are really challenged from a cash flow standpoint. There are some that are challenged beyond that too. But I think many food companies are coming out of March realizing sales were up pretty well, or I've had a decent boost in sales. Maybe it was not an overly organic or natural boost, and I don't know if it will last or not, but revenue was good. I've got some extra cash reserves, and I have some changes I want to make on my team anyway, whether it's growth changes or leveling up their talent. So we've had an influx of clients again in the last number of weeks. I'd say 2 weeks is where we've started to see clients start to poke their head back out and say, maybe I can be hiring right now. And I don't know if that will continue or if we'll see another dip. We don't necessarily we don't require our clients to be tied into a long standing agreement, so they can come and go as they need. So it's really fascinating to watch.
Have you heard from a fair amount of folks that maybe you were involved in recruiting them into a location that have been let go, or most of your people still that you have networks and relationships with holding pat? What's kind of been the status there?
Yeah, a little bit. A few people that we've either placed or that we just know saying I'm back on the market, or I'm nervous about my company, and so I want to keep my eyes open, but not as much as you would think. I think that's coming, is my guess, or not. I suppose this all depends on how long this lasts, but I think this ginormous spike in unemployment is not necessarily directly related to our target client base.
Yeah, I mean, I think again for a myriad of reasons, for on your natural product side, but for us too, being in the natural products business, being in the food and beverage business, and personal care and pet care, things along those lines, we're well positioned as any vertical or any sector to weather it. And certainly, sadly, a lot of the unemployment's coming from food service and hospitality and travel and so forth. Here's a question and I want to remind anyone who wants to enter any questions they have in the Q&A bar. But here's one question that came up, and that is, are you seeing folks right now who are aggressively building their teams?
Yeah, we are. We actually had one company early on. We reached out to most of our clients and just said, what can we expect? And one said, I just took in funding. I know it's an odd time to hire, but I'm going for it. So we have a handful that are aggressively building.
So you just made an interesting point there in terms of it's not a time to hire. It's kind of the sentiment from some. But do you see it as maybe a great time to hire? I mean, people are available. Maybe they recognize they don't have the salary leverage that they did when we were in full employment. And, it could be a really opportunistic time to make that key hire. What would your advice be there to the founders listening in?
I mean, I think it depends on your company. You obviously should not if you're not certain that that's a smart thing to do. I am seeing a lot of companies just kind of think about how to be leaner in general. And I respect that and honor that. But if you're somebody that knows with decent certainty that you're in an okay position and you will likely need, again, to either level up some of your team members or to hire additional team members, then I think now's the time. We're seeing from the candidate side, we're seeing both, right? We're seeing some candidates that are saying, I'm not comfortable moving right now. I've got a good thing going here, or this company is really dependent on me for some of the roles like finance and operations or supply chain. And then we have a number of other candidates that normally wouldn't have responded or just may not have entertained a conversation saying, I probably should have this conversation with you right now because I don't know what's going to happen here for me. So we're seeing both.
So here's another interesting question, and that is, and I'm sure there are a lot of people who are feeling this way. I'm scared. I'm an employee, maybe even a critical employee, but I'm still an employee, and the uncertainty is palpable in our virtual offices right now. What do you advise those people who, they're not necessarily wanting to leave, they're not looking, but they also don't want to get caught completely unaware and ill-prepared? What should they be doing right now?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, hopefully that they're at a place of employment where they can have those conversations honestly, and that their employers will be honest and saying, we don't know, or here's why I wouldn't worry about it or whatnot. But not everybody's that transparent. I mean, I think you gotta be smart. So, do you have a little extra time? Do you have can you reach out to some of your network folks that you haven't reached out to in a while, just to keep some lines of communication open? I mean, I don't think it's that hard to at least open up some options that may not have been there otherwise, if you have any sense that you may not have your position for long. I think that's just smart. That's smart business potentially anytime that there's uncertainty around your role.
And I would say the same.
Certainly one of those times.
Yeah, and more so now than ever. And I would agree. I mean, I think if you do have that relationship with the person you work with and work for, having that conversation and just asking them to just be transparent, it's really hard. I mean, if you're a founder too, and I'm going to flip this around in a second, so I won't say what I was about to, because I'll do it in terms of a question, because it's one that came through on text, and that is, but going and just asking the team that you're working for to be as transparent as possible, and then in return, promising them that you will do the same. Because the one thing that you could do is by signaling that you're nervous or signaling that you're potentially looking, is sending a warning flag across to unintendedly to the person you work for, saying, I'm not all in, or I don't believe in the path we're setting. And that could actually do
Yeah.
you a disservice.
Well,
So
I think that's in the messaging, right?
yeah,
So if you do it, you get to say, I want to stay here for a long time.
that's right.
I'm loving what we're doing. I'm all behind this. I also don't want to be, caught in a
Yep.
position that I didn't. So
And that's why I would say err on the side of over communicating and asking for the same and just being
100%.
completely honest rather than sitting at your desk at home and searching LinkedIn or
Yeah,
elsewhere or and doing things and then running the risk of getting,
totally.
caught.
Yep, absolutely. And it's a tight community. I mean, there's a lot of crossover. If you reach out to somebody, they may know your boss
Oh
or
yeah,
your
it's
boss
so
or whatnot.
incestuous.
So
It's crazy.
so be thoughtful about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So flipping around, I've talked to a bunch of founders, and one just sent me a text and said, how do I have no idea. I have no idea what the hell's going to happen. I mean,
Yeah.
it's day to day, it's hour to hour. I still really believe in our brand. I believe where we're going. I think we're going to be able to convince investors and all of that. But I'm getting asked all the time by my team, and I don't know what to tell them. I don't want
Yeah.
to tell them great, and I don't want to tell them, you
Yeah.
know, the sky is falling. How do I handle this situation
Yeah.
right now?
Well, and I get that. And I've chosen, so I'm a recruiting firm. So even though we have some companies that are hiring is not exactly the best business to have in a recession, or definitely not in a depression. So, I mean, we have been hit, and we ended up actually having to, or choosing to, I should say, furlough about half of our team about 3 weeks ago. Now we ended up getting the PPP funds, and we brought everybody back, which has been really fascinating. And I can talk more about that if that's helpful for anybody. But I was very honest throughout all of it. I mean, that's my leadership style in general. But I I said, I furloughed. I didn't lay off because I would like them back, and I'm optimistic that that can still happen, right? Secondly, when I brought them back, I said, I don't know if this is just for 8 weeks or if this is for, for the long term. And so I think as founders, we get to choose our style. And I totally agree. I mean, I ran the risk when I furloughed, and I imagine this was the case, that people were going to start to look elsewhere. I mean, that's probably smart on their part. I also happen to be, I mean, these are recruiters. And so if we're hit, other recruiting firms are hit. So I don't know where they're going to go
Right,
necessarily,
right.
unfortunately, for their sake. But nonetheless, I think that's a risk founders have to take. And if they create a culture and a place to work that's awesome, then likely, it works out in the end. Meaning if you still have a role for them, they're going to stay. And if there is something else they find that happens to be suit what they're doing better and their needs more, then that's what's supposed to happen anyway. So I don't know. I'm a fan of transparency.
Yeah, I am too. I'm definitely someone who goes full Monty. I mean, I just think
Yeah.
that's the best way to do it.
I don't know how otherwise.
And if you're a founder, I think you have to be authentic to how you've always been communicating with your team, and hopefully you've always been transparent and honest. And
Right.
this is not a time to steer away from vulnerability, and it's not a time to steer away from truth telling. I mean, you don't want to walk into your employees, in my opinion, and say, "Oh my God, I have no idea." I
Yeah,
have no
no.
idea. You're still a leader, and even if you're early in
Yes.
your leadership career, you're still
Yes.
a leader, and you have to give your team confidence that you're the right person to help them weather
Yes.
this storm. But you
I
don't
have
have to be
this
honest. Or
sticky note. I don't know
dishonest.
if you can read it. Panic is contagious, but so is leadership.
Yeah,
So yeah,
that's great, and that's exactly right. And
yeah,
and it's okay, and you'll have those moments of panic, and out yourself and saying, "Hey guys, you know what? I'm having a freak out moment. I'm gonna go step out and chill." And fortunately, now that we're most of us are working remotely, you have those moments where
they don't even have to see them.
they don't even have to see them. You just turn off the video on Zoom, and and
Yeah,
um,
you got it. You got it.
you brought up PPP, so
Yeah.
there are a lot of folks who were waiting and are still waiting and hopeful
Yeah.
about PPP. What are you hearing out there in terms of from your
Uh,
teams?
I mean, in terms of whether the next round will,
Well, first of all, did
didn't it happen
get
actually?
them,
Oh
and
yeah.
just what you're hearing, I'll share what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a number of companies that have gotten it that I know, and then a number that are right behind them that will get it. I don't know if this is enough. This next round, if they opened up enough, my guess is probably not. So then there'll be a third round that may or may not. But I think for those who need it, and got on it early enough in terms of applying, I think they will receive the funds. That's my sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just, hopefully you did it quickly and that you got in.
Totally. I mean,
Hopefully you have a line of communication with your bank. And if you're not reaching out to your bank, I've talked to a lot of people who said, I put it in, I haven't heard anything. And my next question is, have you reached out to them? And they're saying no. Don't the squeaky wheel gets the oil. I mean, that's one of the oldest fundamental truths. So get out there and ask and fight and do what you need to. So
you got it. Yeah. No, I it's fascinating for me. I'm like, I got it early, and yet I was kind of one who almost would have preferred to have the economy present a little more clarity on what's going to be happening. And I also am slightly nervous myself around the fact that the forgiveness rules they don't even have to be fully flushed out for 30 days post March 27th. So I feel like we're working under like a little bit of a blind set of guidelines, but we're doing our best, and we 100% followed the intention, and that we brought everybody back at full compensation, and so hopefully that'll give us some brownie points.
Rooting for you. Here's another question. This one's from Taryn, and that's, given the change of environment, do you think candidates understand that a hire and is quite meaningful these days, and that founders, leaders are making moves for super deliberate reasons, whether that will be to pivot or to add new talent or to address deeper skills within the team they rely on, and just to add to it. I mean, I think it's, let's be honest, there wasn't always that, because we're coming out of a period where we were so flush with employment that there was, to some degree, a growing attitude or belief in an attitude of almost entitlement and so forth. And now those founders who are taking the big ass risks of bringing people in during uncertainty, what's your sense from a candidate's mindset in those that you're talking with? Are they going in going, oh my God, I feel really, really compelled to do even a better job for this person because they're taking this risk on me now?
But it's a good question. I don't know if I can answer it, but I would guess so, right? And I think that will change even more, or will become even more. You'll just be so thankful, I think, for the opportunity. And I'm seeing that with my team. Just like, even though it's only maybe 8 weeks, like, thank you. Like, I'm so excited to come back to work. So I hope that's the case. I don't know that I can speak firsthand to that. My recruiters might be able to more than I can, but.
Yeah, I would say, just the only thing to add to that is that, again, having that conversation. So before they come on, and even in the interview process, listen, the only reason I'm considering hiring at this moment in time is because I see an opportunity and a need in the organization that I'm going to fit. And it's a massive risk that I'm going to be taking.
Yes.
And I need to know that you're in for this massive risk, that you're really committed to go all in. And if they start shaking, or you see beads of sweat on their forehead, or or they stutter in their response out of nerves, then that's a signal for you. So
yeah, for sure. You say hi to everybody. And there's a lot of people watching you right now, so go talk to your daddy.
So future recruit.
Exactly.
So that's actually, it's a great question. I'm going to totally change things around completely for a second and just say, what's it like taking your business home, homeschooling with you guys? I mean, what's it like right now?
So the first word was just like chaotic, frenetic, like, but actually the real word, I think, is just having a lot of compassion. Like, everybody I talk to, it's like, we're just surviving. So we just need compassion for ourselves. And we need to remember, I mean, I haven't even gotten to school yet for a 7-year-old. I
Yeah.
mean, oh well, you know what? He's going
Just
to
had a
be
really
okay in
long
the long.
recess.
Yeah, he had a really, really long, and it happened to be doing a lot of online games that probably would not normally be my top choice. But we're just doing our best, and I think it's offset too by the positives and the things that we wouldn't otherwise get, like family dinners. I mean, every night we're together for dinner,
Yeah.
whereas that's not usually the case because we travel and we work late and we have other things going. So
So
I don't know.
sustain on these questions for a second, because I think those again who are joining us live, but also those who will listen to this or watch it later,
Yeah.
these are the things we're probably not talking about enough right now. And that is, I mean, we're talking about staffing and all of that in terms of what you do professionally, but we're both entrepreneurs. We have very real, palpable realities that we're facing, just like any others in their business. Is it add for you personally, is it adding to your stress, or is it a really nice distraction to have your family around you, the kids around you right now? How does that feel as you're kind of navigating all of this?
It depends. So there were a number of weeks of just full on triaging, and I would say I was about a quarter of the parent I would have liked to have been. So that was stressful, even though they were around, and that was nice. Just my own guilt and judgment
Yeah.
made it hard. I have now, at least for a brief moment, come out of that period of just intense like I would say
Yeah.
triaging,
Yeah.
and now I can appreciate it and enjoy it more, a little bit at least. So I think it's day by day. It's day by day, and the more organized I am in a given day, which is not my strength, like the more I can pre-plan, the better. The more that I can come prepared. So
Yeah, I mean, it's not as messy for us because our
it's
kids are grown, so
not.
um,
I mean, there's like the full spectrum. Like I have two employees where they have kids 3, 4, and under, and it's like it's nearly impossible for them. And we're just
yeah.
having to have compassion. And for me, I have a 14-year-old too. I mean, he's got school. I barely know what they're doing, and it's fine. These teachers are holding him accountable. 7-year-old school's kind of dependent on me, unfortunately. So,
Yeah.
but I'm also, like I said, I'm taking the long-term view of like, if he learns nothing more for the next month, he's still going to be fine in the long run.
Well, and again, I think and this is not again the topic I intended, but just as it's important just for anyone who's listening or watching this is, I mean, this uncertainty, this total upheaval, this everyone's not everyone, but people always would talk about things like life balance, which
Yeah.
by the way, for a long time I have said is BS, and I would say strongly
Yeah,
now that I
exactly.
know there's a younger audience, but because they're, that's saying that life and work are separate, and they're not. But now certainly there is none of that, right, for most people,
Yeah.
because we're in the height of the messiness of life. We're in the middle
Yeah.
of each other's. We're having
Right.
video calls in each other's, homes and
That's right.
backyards, and we're letting people into to our life ends that we hadn't. And I think that adds a whole layer of stress, but also humanity and
Yes.
vulnerability, and also a bit of kind of level setting, right? Because everybody, this is a shared universal experience.
Hmm.
So we all have to remember before we get on our first Zoom call of the day to get out of our pajamas,
That's
to
right.
brush our hair and our teeth
Exactly.
and, that type of stuff. And,
Well,
and
and
that if your house is a mess, the whole world's going to see it. And,
yeah.
it's just totally different. So,
And to tie that back to our clients that are recruiting right now, I think one of the biggest pieces of advice that we're giving to our clients is have a little more leeway than you might otherwise.
yeah.
Like a kid walking in the background would normally be like, really? That's pretty unprofessional, right? Or a dog barking, or maybe they don't make great eye contact because this whole Zoom thing is not that comfortable for them. So unless that's going to be their job,
Yeah.
and they have to be on Zoom calls all day from home with their kids home, which hopefully will not be our reality forever, just have a little more leeway and be a little more human.
That's a perfect segue into the next question that just came up, which is, from what you're seeing, hearing, just being in the space that you're in, how do you think work's going to change? How we work, where we work. What do you see of all of this that sticks?
Yeah. I mean, I believe that remote is going to become more of a norm than it has been in the past. I think, we'll probably see an uptick of 25 to 35%, I think, of companies that will just say, I actually don't need that office that I'm paying $7,000 a month for, whatever it is. And then there will be also those who will I mean, like, I'm on the fence on that, right? So I'm saving a lot of money in theory if I wasn't paying right now, which I am. Uh, but I'm also seeing that we're just not having the same connection. I mean, we're trying, right? We're doing all the right things you can do remotely, but you just can't replace some of those just on the fly connections and in-person things that happen. So I think a lot of companies will find that balance more or go remote completely. But many will not, and many will find that this was a great experiment. And many employees will either have loved this and have realized, like, wow, this is what I've actually wanted forever. And many will realize I was really unproductive, even if my kids weren't home, or
Or
whatever.
lonely, or
lonely, or I need to go to an office and feel productive, or yeah. So I don't know. I don't know. I think I just gave the full gamut, but I think there'll be
yeah, no, I think what I think is going to happen is there's going to be more choice in the equation, and more flexibility. I mean, I think there'll be, I envision, shared office space and co-working spaces, proliferating so that teams can come together when they wanted to physically, but also have that flexibility of not having to, and also having the companies have the flexibility of not having to pay for buildings that they're not fully utilizing. I do think the size of the average office is going to get smaller. I mean, there's some huge benefits to this. I mean, if you can figure out how to make it work within your life. I mean, we all have different cadences to our work. So there's certain times of days where we're more productive than we're not. And so having that flexibility instead of having to be, mandated at certain times. And also the reality of being just that sometimes it saves commute and all of the little,
That's right.
But you're right, it's hard to build team and so forth. Waven asking a question. He wants to know if you think really cool Zoom backgrounds are going to be the currency of the future. So
I mean, I heard they're hot. I still don't personally know how to even do it. I mean, I kind of do, but not really.
You do. Your Zoom background is kids. So
yeah, exactly. That's my Zoom background in this nice, like, Macy's dressing room thing covering my my husband's desk. So I don't know.
Let me switch back to the topic du jour. So a question coming in here. Have you seen a change in compensation levels?
On the recruiting front?
On
what people are seeking? Not yet.
People are willing to pay for the positions, or are there people out there, I guess, for lack of a better term, bargain hunting?
Yes, for sure. The last couple of clients that I have brought in, new clients in the last week, are hoping that they can pay less than they might have otherwise had to have for a little higher level talent. But I don't know if that is going to be the case or not. I would guess it for sure will be over time. I just don't know about yet.
Yeah.
I mean, again, we're not seeing a ton of talent from this industry flood the market yet either.
Which is a good thing. And the other thing you don't want
to stay that way. It may stay that way.
And you don't want to ever hire on the cheap, in my opinion, because if you do that, then the likelihood is that when the economy does rebound and things return to normal, that person will come knocking, physically by then, or at least virtually, saying, I need more, or I need to leave. And so, but what you could potentially do is have a candid conversation. I want to make this hire. You want me to make this hire. We're in a period of uncertainty. So I can afford to pay you X for the next time period. And then we can reevaluate in 60 or 90 days. And if things have returned to a more normal cadence and the world has opened up, I'm prepared to pay you Y. So there's nothing wrong, in my opinion, of having that conversation and coming to a mutual agreement, but it should be, discussed. So
I totally agree, and I couldn't agree more that paying somebody less than that which they are seeking significantly, as long as they're not delusional in their seeking, rarely works out in the long run. It just doesn't.
What are
Not that
brands not doing right now as it relates to staffing that you think they should be?
I don't know. It's a really good question. I mean, I don't know if they're thinking about the remote, the best practices around hiring and onboarding in a remote situation like we're
Yeah.
in. So I could share some thoughts there. But I don't know. I mean, I think everybody's situation is so unique that I don't know if I can answer that. I mean, I do, like I said earlier, I think I honor and respect and think that those that are seeking to figure out how to get leaner are wise.
Yeah.
I also, you know, as I said earlier, I also think it's a good opportunity to make sure you got the right people in the right seats.
Yeah.
So if you have had some people that you've been on the fence with, this is not necessarily the time to settle, you know. I mean, it's not a great time for that individual to be letting them go. I recognize that, but you can do it in a really human way, and you could eventually, over time or right away, you know, find somebody who maybe fits what you're looking for more. So
Yeah, we're having a lot of conversations around the difference between being kind and being nice. So,
that's a really good
right.
distinction. Yes,
So right now is the time to be kind. You have to
you
be
got it.
kind first and foremost to your business, because
Yeah.
you take on responsibility as an entrepreneur when you hire people, that you're going to do everything you possibly can to provide the opportunities for them in which you told them you would when they came on, or were
Right.
implicit in coming to work.
Yes.
And part of that is being willing and being able to make the hard decisions about your team when you need to
Hmm.
make them in order to preserve the business for the long term. And
Yes.
that sometimes requires you to not be nice, because there's no nice way to let a person go. There's a compassionate way, but it's not going to be nice.
Right.
Your job as a founder right now is to be kind.
Yes.
And that's a really tough delineation to do it. And you can't afford, in my experience and opinion, you can't afford now, so more than ever, but really at any point, especially as a relatively young and emerging brand, you cannot afford to
Yeah.
carry people who don't perform. So I would encourage everyone to really
Yeah.
take a hard look and ask the tough question right now, and
Hmm.
and and just emphasize to yourself and to your team about being kind versus being nice.
I think that's a great distinction. Yeah.
I'm gonna ask another question here in terms of overall recruitment. Um,
Mm.
if I'm that nervous, because this is another one that's coming through here. If I'm that nervous person, what do I do to position myself? I mean, I haven't been out. I'm reading. I haven't been out in the open market for a while. What do I need to do
Mm.
to be marketable?
Yeah. It's a good question. And I have a lot of compassion for those who are job seeking right now, or are out in the market now. If you've got the relevant experience, I do think there are companies in our industry that are hiring. So it's not a hopeless cause by any means. But it's interesting. It's an interesting time to try to find a job. So I think now more than ever, you work your network. You get on LinkedIn, you figure out who you knew, who you know, who knows who you want to know. You target specific companies that you're excited about and that you think are doing well right now, and you tell them the story about how you think that you can solve some of their problems. Um, and you don't count on job boards and just putting your resume into a black hole potentially right now. I mean, there's going to be a lot of resumes. We're already seeing far more resumes. That doesn't mean they're relevant candidates or applicable for the roles that we're hiring for, but we're seeing definitely an influx in volume of applicants. So you work your network, you make yourself really relevant, you make yourself heard, again, by finding who it is that you know at that company, and you tell your story.
Yeah, yeah, and don't hesitate. I mean, just prepare yourself for it, and it's a unfortunate reality to be out in this market right now. But again,
Right.
it could be a great opportunity, and just be really clear on what value you add, right?
That's
And
right.
and that's so that
Yeah.
another question that just came up is, what do I need to be doing right now to make sure that I'm not the one that when you talk about getting confused between kindness and niceness,
Yeah.
but I'm not the one that they're being nice to. What do
No.
we need to do? And I mean, my answer is just make sure you ask yourself the real serious question consistently through your business day. Am I adding value right now? Am
Yeah.
I adding value? So,
Right. Yeah, and figure out where your accountability lies and make sure you're focused on that. And if that's not clear, you get to talk to your whoever about that. And also, I think right now, being really willing to be flexible. The companies are needing to shift their strategies and shift people around from, I mean, right now I've got half my team or a little less than doing marketing and sales. These are recruiters, right? But they're like stepping up, and it's incredibly impressive. And it's going to go a long way in my head. Now they happen to all be stepping up, which is amazing. So I don't know if it's putting one person above another in that respect, but I think just being willing and flexible to go with the flow right now. But results, it
so,
comes down to the results.
so this is going to be a weird question. Okay.
Okay.
So I wonder why. So we've done a bunch of these TIG talks, and I wonder why, when it comes to staffing and hiring and so forth, we see less uh, participation and fewer questions. I would think in this moment of time, this is such a critical question for founders and entrepreneurs. And I know, we've done a lot of other tactical conversations around,
Yes, and
you know,
that
my,
answers it.
how to market my business on e-com, and what do I need to do with my retailers and
Yeah.
so forth. But I think this is so critical, and there will be a lot of people who will catch this post. But I see it somewhat as a missed prioritization. I just want to get your sense on just in general, as you
Yeah.
advise companies and so forth, to all things staffing. I mean, you have a unique perspective because you
Mhm.
see it very clearly, and your team does, from really three different ends. You see it as a business development person out trying to build
Mhm.
relationships with new clients and new brands, and so what's resonating with them. You see it entrepreneur to entrepreneur,
Mhm.
what they're
Totally.
going through, what they're doing, what's
Mhm.
sticking in their head, and so forth. And you see it from the person who is either in the middle of job seeking or is potentially being forced to be in the middle of job seeking.
Right.
What would you want to be sharing with any of those audiences about today and what's going on in the world?
Yeah. I mean, I can't blame entrepreneurs for not prioritizing hiring or even just human capital needs right now. They're triaging. At least that's where I've been, right? So I couldn't pick my head up to do other, not on fire things for three to
Yeah, that
4 to
makes
5
sense.
weeks, besides like figuring out my P&L, figuring out my staffing needs, doing forecasting on what work we have, figuring out how the hell this PPP loan worked, applying for it, then getting the funds and figuring out how to bring everybody back and what are they going to work on, right? So I think there's just been so many like fires to put out, right? And for food companies, like, where's my supply chain? How much do we need? Oh my gosh, Amazon, wait, I can't keep things on the shelves. I mean, there's just burning issues. And while I do agree with you that human capital is probably your number one most important thing you can and should be thinking about, I don't blame them if they haven't yet. So I think we'll see that happen more in the next couple of weeks, where all of a sudden they're like, okay, what team do I have? Where are my gaps?
Yeah,
Where,
interesting.
where are my opportunities? So I don't expect that to happen for, today. And I'm not surprised you don't get a ton of questions today, but I think you will or we will, and everybody will, you know, in the next number of weeks and months as this becomes more. In fact, one of the things I'll tell you that we're launching is we're calling it next placement. If you know what outplacement is, that's a, you know, a concept around you do have to let some people go. How do you do that in a kind and empathetic way and give them some resources? And as part of that, we're calling it next placement, as I said, and we are going to offer those job search strategy consulting services for employers to offer to people they're letting go. But we're also offering services around what should I do? Is furlough the right option? Is laying off the right option? Is workforce rejiggering the right option? And what's the compliance and the paperwork side? And we're teaming up with an HR organization called Cure HR and offering those services together.
That's great. What a huge service that is. Yeah, it's a massive decision. Sometimes people are just paralyzed with what to do.
Yeah, so. Exactly. And I think we're going to find that those are services that people feel like, okay, I need that now. And then I also need the hiring, you know, in a few weeks or.
Yeah, I agree with everything.
People go and now I need to rehire.
I agree with everything you said about the fact that people are triaging and they're in that moment-to-moment
yeah.
And I get it and I agree with it. But I will just a bit of admonishment to people is that you've got to, even if you put it in your calendar, you know, for an hour of day to lift your head up from triage and look at the landscape and see what are my opportunities right now.
Yes.
You have a rare opportunity, you know, if you can, to make certain really strategic decisions to leapfrog your competition. But if you're caught in the throes of triaging 24/7, you'll miss them.
Yes.
So put in your calendar, you know, call it work on business time or something like that.
Right.
Lift your head up and you say, I'm shutting down my emails. I'm not triaging. It's 1 hour a week, 2 hours a week where I think about what strategic moves, how am I doing from a human capital standpoint? Right. You know, what can I be doing differently right now to put myself forward? I mean, I you know, we're trying to do the same thing for our business, you know, is making sure that we don't get swept away in the moment to moment and we pause and think about what's the market signaling to any of us that we should be looking to capitalize on.
Mm-hmm. You got it. Yep.
All right. So my last question, how do people get a hold of you? Where do they find out more information?
Yeah.
So
sure. So it's Creative Alignments. So creativealignments.com. Sorry for how many letters that is. And I think you're welcome to reach out to me. It's Peggy at creativealignments.com. Or you can find me on LinkedIn, Peggy Shell. I also have an amazing team, so any number of them would be great to reach out to. I know you know Frank Milianti. He is our managing director for our CPG practice, so he'd be a great resource. You may get emails from Arn Hayden. He's working hard to try to figure out which of you are out there needing our services, so you may hear from him from a business development standpoint. And then, I guess that's it. I was going to give a phone number, but you can find that on our site. I don't even know what a general phone number is.
Who uses the phone, the landline?
Phone? What's that?
Yeah. Well, awesome. Thanks for being here. And again, for those joining, the recording will be made available on YouTube, and we will be making this available on a podcast episode coming soon. And thanks so much, Peggy. It was great.
Awesome, Elliot. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Yeah.
Pleasure. Take care.
Take care. Good luck to everybody. Stay healthy and well, and we're gonna get through this. I mean, that is the fact of the matter. Is this is just where we're at today. And as a species, we've been here before, and we've come out of it, and we will do the same. And patience. I mean, can you believe it's already been over a month and a half since we've just been home? I mean, it's flown by. So patience too, please, in terms of getting back out there. I know that's a political.
And next week is going to mark is 2 months since Expo is canceled. May 1st.
Right. And didn't that seemed like the biggest deal. And now it's like, oh, that's a tiny little decision in this whole
thing. It seems so long ago.
I know.
So long ago.
I know, it's for sure.
Cool.
All right. Well, take care. Thanks again.
All right. Bye, everyone.
All right. Take care.